County Awake is now convened and sitting for the special memorial session. The Honorable Judge Vince M. Rozier Jr. present and presiding. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes, God save the state and this honorable court. Please be seated and remain quiet. All electronic devices should be silenced at this time. Good afternoon, Your Honor.
Good afternoon, Madam Deputy. Good afternoon to you all. First, I would just say that this is indeed an honor to be able to preside over this special ceremony that we have here today. I was speaking with the judge earlier this week in Cumberland County, and he was just amazed by the fact that Wake County is able to do this and to honor each individual attorney who's brought forward. And so today we'll have an opportunity to remember the lives of those who are being remembered today. And I'll let you know I personally appreciate it because we walk these halls, that building, this building, and sometimes you wonder, is anybody going to care whenever I'm gone? And today we have the answer, yes. And so I would tell you that the normal rules of court that would not allow for photography are suspended. The normal rules of court that might cause you to be held in contempt if you laugh out loud are suspended. And if you feel free and you feel so moved that you want to shed a tear, then that is fine as well. And so with that being said, I will turn this matter over to the bar, 10th Judicial District, for the special ceremony. So yes, you may proceed.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jake Epstein. I'm the president of the 10th Judicial District Bar. I just want to say welcome and thank you for being here. As part of the 10th Judicial District, or as the 10th Judicial District, we really, really like these memorial sessions of court. We've done them for a long time and they're important to us. They're important so that we can honor and hear about the contributions that are made by our members and those who have passed. Our bar, the 10th Judicial District, is one of the most professional and accomplished in the state. And that is because of the lawyers we have, the members we have, some of whom you'll hear about today. We hope that today, when you leave, there's a reason that we take some time before we have these sessions after a member passes. We hope that you'll take today, hear some stories, understand some about these folks, maybe remember some about these folks, leave with a smile, sense of gratitude, and proud of what they accomplished. I want to thank Judge Rozier, this court staff for allowing us to do this, Mary Winstead and the Memorials Committee for setting all this up, and really to the families and the friends of these folks, these lawyers and people who are being honored here today. Thank you so much. It is as everyone knows, a big time commitment to be a lawyer and to practice law or a judge. And we thank you for sharing them with us during their life and their career. And thank you for allowing us to do this. It's meaningful to us. And we hope it's meaningful to you that we get to share these few moments with you and celebrate them and enjoy and remember all that they've done for not only the profession, but also the entire community. And with that, I'll turn it over to Mary Winstead. Thank you, folks.
Good afternoon. My name is Mary Winstead, and I have the honor of being the chair of the Memorials Committee for the 10th Judicial District. It is an honor to serve as the chair of the committee that plans and hosts these memorial sessions. On behalf of the members of the committee, I also want to welcome all of you to this special memorial session of court, our first of 2025. I know some of you have traveled from far away, and we just want to say that we really appreciate you taking the time to be with us today. The 6 distinguished lawyers that we honor today have been remembered at other times and at other services. But this memorial session of court is different because it allows us, the bar, to celebrate with you, the friends and families and colleagues of these distinguished lawyers. It is appropriate that we gather in this space to remember your family members and honor our deceased former colleagues and pay them tribute. After all, your loved ones, some of them probably spent as much time in these courtrooms and with other lawyers as they did with you, at least at times. And so it's appropriate that we pay them tribute here. These memorial sessions always reveal so many interesting things about the lawyers of our local bar. I've often mused that attendance at these should be required for new lawyers, or at least for law students, because without a doubt you're going to hear some stories of professionalism of the older lawyers, some of which may have been lost with the passage of time. Hopefully, this will be a welcomed opportunity for reflection and remembrance, as well as a time to share a laugh or two. Today, we collectively pause from the business of meting out justice in these courtrooms and all that comes with that, to honor 6 attorneys who are no longer with us, but who have each left a legacy that we want to honor. On behalf of the Memorials Committee, I also want to thank the families of our honorees for sharing them with us and for allowing us to honor them. Before we begin, a couple of brief housekeeping matters. The video is not working today, so I know each of the families had shared with us a photograph that we were going to project on the screen, but we have a glitch. But please be assured that when the video is compiled, you'll be able to see that the photographs we were going to show here and more. So I apologize for that. Our first honoree today is Robert A. Bryan, Jr., and he will be remembered by Joe DeLuca.
For those who have never met Bobby, I'd like you to know one important fact about him that helps explain a lot of his life and who he was. For most of his 69 and a half years and almost his entire adult life, Bobby was wheelchair bound. He was almost a complete quadriplegic. He had very limited movement of his arms and hands. And this is the way he was when I met him, the way he was for his entire working career. He had an accident in law school, recovered from that, but never walked again after that. He could control his wheelchair quite well, and he had at least 2 of them in the time that I knew him, and I'm not sure how many he rode through, how many thousands of miles he got on his chair, but he could control that quite well with a joystick on his right-hand arm, and he could feed himself quite well, although on occasion he might need help getting the paper or plastic cover off a straw or cutting up some meat. But other than that, he really didn't act handicapped, because he wasn't. We met around 1990. I was an attorney at that time. I had been in private practice here in Wake County, but I went to work for the state of North Carolina with the Rules Review Commission as a staff attorney. So I dealt with Bobby once or twice. He was an attorney with the Department of Labor, dealt with him in the course of that practice. And then after a couple of years, the director of the commission left, became a member of the United States Foreign Service, and I was fortunate enough to succeed into her position, and I needed another staff attorney. Bobby is the one we ended up hiring for that. Now, to tell the truth, I was a little bit concerned that we might not be able to meet reasonable accommodations. I didn't know what they were. I knew at the time that a lot of speech and computer stuff was coming around, but they were expensive, and I didn't know whether we'd be able to meet any of his accommodations. Well, he said, Joe, what I need is somebody to take these 4 by 4 by 6 inch blocks of wood with a little cutout in the top to put under his desk, to lift his desk up and get those blocks there so that he could get his wheelchair under it. And maybe some of you remember the old green heavy volumes of North Carolina statutes. They were on these rolling carts. He said, and if you could get those off those carts and onto the desk, I can get them out a lot easier. So we were able to accommodate that quite easily, and he became part of the staff. I think that paints the perfect picture of Robert Angus Bryan Jr., not expecting or asking for much. At the same time, he gave so much back to his work. In the almost 25 years we worked together, he never missed a meeting. We had one meeting a month. Once in a while we'd have two. He never missed a meeting. I cannot say that. I'd miss some. He even had a broken leg, which for a person in his position, that was extremely serious. He was in the hospital with that, but he didn't miss a day of work. He scheduled everything around that meeting. That included a trip to China. And the reason I get so emotional, that's when we found out about Monica, his to-be wife, although we didn't know that at the time. I don't know if he knew it, but imagine this, again, a quadriplegic, heavy wheelchair. He could not take that with him. That was not going to be functional in China, that didn't know the meaning of curb cuts or of wheelchair access on an elevator. There were none. But he made that trip, went to Beijing with his sister and brother-in-law. They helped him get around. They got to Beijing. They took a 24-hour train ride to where Monica was a teacher, an English teacher in school there. And they were there. And then he returned and made the meeting for that month. I adopted a child in Lithuania, and I missed the meeting, but he made his meeting. He was not afraid of doing things. He could do things, and he dared to do things. And for that, he actually has become a hero of mine. I would like to finally express my gratitude to Monica, his wife, his lovely wife, for giving me this opportunity to reminisce about my friend and coworker, and perhaps make a few attorneys always aware of someone in their midst who they may not have known. Thank you very much.
The next honoree is the Honorable Stafford G. Bullock, and he will be presented by Justice Michael Morgan.
I thank the Bar, the Memorials Committee, and the family for affording me this privilege. The Honorable Stafford G. Bullock was a giant of a man. Physically, he certainly presented that way, with a solid and sturdy build, who was as strong as an ox. Born in Oxford in 1942, Judge Bullock remained true to his rural roots, exuding a quiet strength exemplified by commendable core values, a laudable work ethic, and an insatiable drive to succeed in all that he undertook. The characteristics of determination, courage, leadership, excellence, discipline, thoroughness, and even audacity, all encapsulated in his quiet strength, were in evidence throughout his remarkable life and career. Judge Bullock left the country setting of Oxford for the big capital city of Raleigh. as he earned his Bachelor of Arts degree from Shaw University. He went on to the even bigger capital city of Washington, D.C., where he attained his Juris Doctor degree from Howard University School of Law in 1969. Upon his return to North Carolina, Judge Bullock started his legal career in relatively modest fashion, starting as a legal consultant for the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction, next becoming a lawyer in private practice, followed by a stint as an assistant district attorney with the Wake County District Attorney's Office. And then the legend of Stafford Governor Bullock began to unfold. In April of 1974, he became a pioneering icon on the judicial bench of Wake County when Governor James E. Holshouser appointed him to be a district court judge, thus making Judge Bullock this county's first African-American judge to serve in the current court system now known as the General Court of Justice. Judge Bullock held the seat as a Wake County District Court judge as a judge in that capacity for over 20 consecutive years of successful subsequent elections. Judge Bullock blazed a new pathway when, in 1991, he became the first African-American jurist to serve as Wake County Chief District Court Judge. This giant of a man was never content to merely rest on his laurels. Judge Bullock's quiet strength, buttressed by all of his exemplary qualities, was again impressively displayed in 1994 when he was elected to a newly created Superior Court judge seat here in Wake County. His ascension to the Superior Court bench left a complete void of an African-American presence among the 12 judges who then comprised the district court bench here in Wake County. When Governor James B. Hunt Jr. saw fit to appoint little old me to fill that void of racial diversity on the local district court bench, which was occasioned by Judge Bullock's elevation to Superior Court, a special mentorship and bond was created between him and me that I'll forever treasure. Through his quiet strength and steadfast qualities, Judge Bullock dutifully, willingly, consistently, and even insistently mentored me, not merely about judicial life, but about all phases of my life through the prism of the eyes of an experienced judge. He poured into me, not only with his words, but also with his demeanor and his way and his example. And as he seemed to recognize the increasingly indelible institutionalism of his legacy, Judge Bullock converted some of his quiet strength into his dynamic influence upon not only me, but the careers of all of us who followed behind him, for whom he opened the doors. And there he is before us. He sincerely welcomed the opportunity to give it back by paying it forward. In 1981, for example, he lent his prestige to assist a group of African-American attorneys to establish a sanctioned bar association named the Capital City Lawyers Association, in which he is listed as a founding member. Upon serving 10 years in that Superior Court judgeship to which he elevated, and when he decided to retire from the bench in 2004, Judge Bullock crafted and instituted a strategy to enable me to succeed him in his Superior Court seat. He continued to make himself available to the next generation of judges by pouring into all of us who came behind him, all of us who sought his wisdom, sought his guidance, and sought his candor. I succeeded him in the Superior Court seat, and Judge Rozier succeeded me in that seat. So the lineage of this Superior Court seat is Judge Bullock to me to Judge Rozier. Something how things work out. At the statewide judicial conferences, again, as Judge Bullock continued to pour into other people, he openly relished his role, even in retirement as an emergency judge, as the grizzled lion among us judges across the state who would actually compete for his attention during the breaks, beckon him to ride in the car we were driving. Don't go to the other car, ride with us, we want to take you. At these judicial conferences, Judge Bullock never had to drive anywhere. We all loved to have him as a passenger because we wanted to have his company. And if you were unsuccessful in getting him at a break or getting him to ride in your vehicle at the judicial conference, somehow you tried to find a way to get an audience with him, because we all just wanted to sit at his knee and learn from him. And yet, with all that I have mentioned in this admittedly difficult effort, doomed to failure by the restrictions of time under which I labor, trying to capture the full measure of this transformative jurist, the Honorable Stafford G. Bullock was much more than just a judge. He was a cattle farmer. He was a businessman, an officer of his church, a biblical scholar, a fraternity man, a world traveler. Yes, you may even say he was a Renaissance man, combining all of those attributes. But most of all, he was a loving and beloved husband, father, grandfather, and anchor of his family. Indeed, Judge Bullock was a giant of a man. Thank you.
Our next honoree is Leonard M. Dodd, and he will be presented by Jonathan Babb.
Good afternoon. I am Jonathan Babb, and I have the honor of speaking today on behalf of Leonard Michael Dodd. I want to thank Mary Lou for this privilege. After graduating from Wake Forest University School of Law, Mike served as a JAG officer in the U.S. Army, which led to a fair number of stories he shared with me over our time at DOJ. After his service in the Army, he returned to Raleigh and was in private practice as a criminal defense attorney. As a criminal defense attorney, I believe he represented over 30 capitally charged clients and had a very good record. In 2005, Mike joined the Attorney General's office in the Capital Litigation and Federal Habeas section, where I worked, and he became my office next door neighbor. We worked together from that point until he retired from DOJ at the end of 2020. Because our offices were beside each other, I would always see Mike when I came into work. He would always beat me in. I don't know when he woke up, but the sun wasn't up yet. We were also fellow YMCAers. Even if you had a picture of him a little bit older, you would see he did a little bit better at the Y than I did. He beat me there too. Because of his long experience as a trial lawyer, I and others in the section would often ask for his take on things, because as ineffective assistance of counsel is a big issue in post-conviction cases, and he was as good an expert as you're going to find. He was a good resource to talk with and discuss issues and takes on things, and sometimes try to figure out what really happened. Beyond work matters, I always appreciated talking with and getting advice from Mike in a great range of subjects: sports, politics, and history, were common areas of discussion. I'm sure that's no shock to his family. Often we shared the concerns and challenges of being a deacon, or worse yet, a member of the church finance committee during lean budget years. We had many a prayer session about our respective situations. I can always count on Mike as my walking partner to head down for early voting on the first available day, or the second. By the time we got to the third, I usually meant I'd be walking by myself. Mike did not dawdle, nor did he forget little things. A gift for support staff, a birthday of a coworker, maybe a coworker going through some tough times, or as Mary Lou would be well aware, I'm sure, running home if a storm was coming to get the grass cut. It was always funny to me that Mike needed my help when anything changed on the computer at work. It was especially funny because he could read German and play a guitar, which was basically like magic to me, but he needed my help on that. But there was a bonus to that. I got to see tons of pictures of Mary Lou and the children. Anna, Margaret, and Michael Jr., when I would help him on the computer. And he didn't mind talking about them. He was such a proud father and husband. And then once he became a grandfather, I thought he was going to bust wide open with every step he took, to be honest with you. Mike was a Washington fan. I was and am a Cowboy fan. We didn't have much to talk about during our time together. But we were both Wolfpack fans. Anyone who talked to Mike very long would know he was a big-time Pack fan. We didn't have too much to talk about there either. And anyone who attended our section's Christmas party knew one thing for sure. The belle of the ball was Mike's homemade pound cake. When I think about Mike, what comes to mind most strongly for me, as I think it does for most people who knew him, is his faith and his love of family. The next thing I think about is how he conducted himself as an attorney. Truly a gentleman and an officer of the court. As straight an arrow as you could find. One story comes to mind when I think about Mike. He handled a post-conviction capital case called Burr versus Jackson. Went to the Fourth Circuit in federal habeas. He wrote the brief for the state. Defendant wrote their brief. In that, the defendant argued there was a Brady violation, that pretrial recording wasn't turned over, and it was different than the transcript of the recording that was turned over. That recording was subsequently discovered in the post-conviction process. There's not a lot of kind words shed on the other side in post-conviction and capital cases, shall we say. But in defendant's brief, the counsel for defendant said this in a footnote. The petitioner wants to make clear that the Attorney General's counsel in this appeal was not involved in the suppression of this tape. Rather, if not for his efforts, the tape would never have been discovered. Of course, no surprise that Mike Dodd was the Special Deputy Attorney General in that case. Mike's career in the practice of law was an example of how attorneys should conduct themselves, and the bar is better for his life and career as an attorney. Thank you.
Now, Thomas P. McNamara will be remembered by David Long.
Intelligent, ethical, even-tempered, highly respected, professional, integrity, morality, and ethics of the highest order, fairness, compassion, wonderful reputation among lawyers, court personnel, and the judiciary, These are some of the adjectives that describe Thomas Peter McNamara, this wonderful man we honor today. Tom and I first met at Duke in the early 60s, and we do have something to talk about. I hope we continue to have something to talk about. We renewed our acquaintance in Raleigh in about 1967. Tom was in private practice, I was in private practice, but in 1969, Tom and I went to the United States Attorney's Office. We were right across the street in the Century Post Office, just to show how old we are. And Tom and I were the fourth and fifth lawyers in the office at the time. The office was very collegial, very social. At that time, we were assigned divisions and handled all the cases from indictment through appeals. In February 1970, there was a murder of a woman and 2 children at Fort Bragg. The lead FBI agent in Raleigh told me the next day that it was the husband and that the Army would take the case. At that time, I was assigned to the Fayetteville Division, so it would have been my case had it gone federal. Tom stayed on after I left the office in 1971. And in 1972, the flamboyant U.S. attorney we had at the time, who was very colorful, Warren Coolidge, leaked a story to the Raleigh Times that 13 leading Democrats were being investigated for tax crimes involving the Governor Bob Scott campaign. The next day, didn't take long, the next day, Mr. Coolidge was ordered to go to DOJ in Washington, and he met with the then Attorney General of the United States, John Mitchell, who summarily dismissed him. And how many people can get fired by John Mitchell? At age 34, the youngest ever at the time, Tom was named acting U.S. Attorney and was subsequently nominated and confirmed as U.S. Attorney in 1973. And coincidentally, Judge Boyle was on Senator Helms' staff at that time. Meanwhile, at Fort Bragg, the Army managed to completely mess up the Jeffrey McDonald case. And Tom, with an assist from Judge Butler, was successful in getting the Department of Justice to become re-involved. I have here a letter that I got after Tom's death from June, from an attorney by the name of Richard Kahn. When I first met Tom in April 1974 in the chambers of the Chief Judge Algernon Butler, Tom was a 35-year-old U.S. attorney and his client was the United States government. Mine were Alfred and Mildred Kassab from Long Island, the in-laws of U.S. Army Captain Jeffrey McDonald, whose wife Colette and their daughters Kimberly and Kristen were savagely murdered 3 years before at Fort Bragg. The Kassabs had looked at the evidence and believed that it showed McDonald committed the murders. So had Tom, and he too believed that McDonald was the perpetrator. But Tom had a problem. His superiors at DOJ in Washington had refused to prosecute. I was in North Carolina that day with the Kassabs and Peter Kearns, the Army's chief investigator, to present a citizen's criminal complaint to force the government to prosecute. Tom could have opposed us on procedural grounds or simply stated the position of central justice. But he did neither. As lawyers are trained to do, he was candid, truthful, and comprehensive in his statement to Judge Butler, making it clear how and why he disagreed with DOJ. Tom doing the right thing that day led to strong and unprecedented actions by Judge Butler, who demanded that the Attorney General of the United States advise him if a grand jury indicted McDonald, will the government prosecute him. And if the answer is no, the Attorney General or his representative would be required to travel to North Carolina and personally explain to Judge Butler why he would not. Judge Butler's demand to the Attorney General changed history. There is no doubt that Tom's strong, courageous, honorable statement that day was the reason justice was done in this notorious case. Tom's talent and courage made him one of the few extraordinary lawyers I was fortunate to meet during my years of practice. We are all the poorer for his passing. Tom will forever be remembered for signing the Jeffrey McDonald indictment in 1975. He left the office in 1976 to return to private practice. This was 3 years before McDonald was convicted. For the next 24 years, Tom was in private practice doing mostly criminal defense work, but always doing pro bono work and mentoring young lawyers. In 1985, the Eastern District of North Carolina opened a federal public defender office, and over the next 15 years, there were 15 chief federal public defenders. Frankly, the office was a disaster. The judges were naming their buddies from the U.S. Attorney's Office to appear as public defenders. Tom and I didn't like it. The office was not run well. It was just like talking to the U.S. Attorney to go in and talk to the Chief Public Defender. So Tom and I, among others, were active in getting Judge Boyle, who was the senior person on the advisory committee, Merit Selection Advisory Committee, that we need to get somebody on the criminal defense side to take over in that office. Tom McNamara was selected by Judge Boyle, and Tom was always one of Judge Boyle's favorites, to be very candid with you. Tom was the second person at that time to serve as both U.S. Attorney and federal public defender. Tom was always active in the bar. He served on the board of directors on numerous committees, including the Grievance Committee. Tom continued to be active in leadership roles while serving as U.S. Attorney, while serving as federal public defender. Tom was twice named Tar Heel of the Week, received the Order of the Longleaf Pine, and was the first recipient of the Eastern District of North Carolina Federal Bar Association Judge David W. Daniel Award for excellence in the legal community. Now, there are a number of people from the U.S. Attorney's Office here today. That office has approximately 65 people. It was a big law firm in its day. Several members of the federal bar, federal prosecutor's office have gone on to greater things, including one who is in the Superior Court bench down in Cumberland County, and you may have talked to her recently, and if you haven't, you need to. Gail Adams. In addition to folks from the Federal Public Defender's Office, June is here, his wife, Megan, and her husband, Bryan, grandchildren. They're here with us today. Tom was a loving father, loving grandfather. In closing, I want to tell you a story about Tom, the athlete. Now, you know, Tom was a pretty good tennis player. Tom was a pretty good basketball player, but few people knew that Tom was a track person. Tom was on the freshman track team at Duke, and he was involved in a very famous race. The track coach wanted Tom, who was a sprinter, to run a 100-yard dash with one of the varsity people. He gave Tom a 20-yard lead, and the senior track person at Duke, who at that time was known as the world's fastest human, easily overtook Tom. And Tom was always mindful of this whipping that he took on the track. The interesting thing about that, the person that he ran against was a guy by the name of Dave Sim, who was a famous obstetrician down in Miami, but he is the grandfather of Christian McCaffrey, who many of you may have heard of. Tom was a real deal, and I'm happy that I've had this opportunity to speak on his behalf.
Frederick P. Parker III will be presented by Roger Askew.
I would like to thank the 10th Judicial District Bar and Fred's family for giving me the honor of the opportunity to say a few words about the life and legacy of one of North Carolina's legal giants. Fred P. Parker, as he was known as Fred, is known and well remembered for many things, the least of which is his ubiquitous and unmistakable signature, which appears on tens of thousands of law licenses all across the United States and overseas. And if you're in this courthouse right this minute and you took the bar exam before June of 2013, he's on your law license. His signature is one of the things most people know about. When I told people I'd speak about Fred Parker, the first thing they said was, "Oh, that's on my law license." You know, we as lawyers and other people and professionals receive thousands of correspondences over the course of a career, but there's one piece of correspondence you never forget, and that was the one that Fred sent you, or the second one he sent you, or more. I had the honor of knowing Fred before and after his retirement, and I want to take a few minutes to say a little about Fred as a person. I remember him, like so many others do, as a crafty, unassuming, and quiet man. He was the consummate Southern gentleman. He had a Southern drawl, and he had many talents. Fred graduated from the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill. He began his career working for the North Carolina Department of Justice. In 1973, he became the first ever executive director of the North Carolina Board of Law Examiners. This required a detail man. Fred was a detail man, and I said multitasker. And if you knew Fred, you probably know he had many other talents, including one that he should have been an ex officio member of the Court of Master Sommeliers. He was quite a dapper dresser, and Fred could really do a bow tie justice. He amazingly could make any color seersucker suit look fashionable even a few days before Memorial Day, but never after Labor Day. And Fred could discuss any subject from sailing to history. When I sat for the bar, I did not know Fred personally, but I knew of him and knew he was a person to be respected and, quite candidly, at that stage in my life, to be feared. I guess after I passed the bar some 34 years ago, I lost the fear part, but the respect endures to this day. Even though Fred retired in 2013, just before I went on the Board of Law Examiners, I had the pleasure of enjoying time with him and other then board members. And at those outings, it actually sparked my interest in serving on the board. Those who've served with Fred would all say they never saw him get upset. They never saw him get flustered. And Fred had an uncanny way of using levity as an effective de-escalation mechanism. He always had a good story. One story that has made the rounds over the years is the quite humorous response of a bar exam taker who answered a rather esoteric essay question in 3 sentences by stating simply, "I have never heard the legal terms identified in that question. I want to compliment the law examiners for drafting such a thorough and thoughtful exam question, and I am sure I will excel on my answer at the next administration of the exam." Fred was not just a great person, but was the quintessential lawyer. Most of you knew that Fred, if you knew him, Fred played an integral part in the development of our cadre of lawyers that we have today, having served not only as the first executive director of the 92-year-old Board of Law Examiners, but he served with distinction for 40 years. I presently serve as chair of that board and have been a member for over 10 years, and I can tell you that Fred's fingerprints are all over the work we do every single day in licensing and making new lawyers. Fred oversaw not only the bar exam, but an even bigger part of our work, which Fred was particularly proud of, was our character and fitness examinations. When a lawyer becomes licensed, the board has to certify that we have examined that person and have made the determination that they are of such upright character as to be entitled to practice before the several courts of our state. Fred essentially invented that character and fitness examination. Before our board, the Supreme Court licensed lawyers and did not have the time or the resources necessary. But back then, we probably only had 12 lawyers a year. We didn't have 1,600 coming out a year. It made a big difference. All of the work that Fred spent over his career was extremely time-consuming and required thousands of details, and Fred made sure that all of the moving parts were working. When you think of Fred, people think of the bar exam. That was just part of his job. But imagine 1,600 applicants writing 12 long essays. That's 19,200 separate essays that had to be photocopied, bound together in books of 25, and each separately read and graded. And Fred had to have a place for everyone at the exam to sit, hopefully free of vermin and rodents. But that did happen a few times, for which we made CNN. We've had the lights go out at the bar exam, but Fred never flinched. Fred had to have proctors for every 25 exam takers and arranged for the board to grade and calculate scores. Thanks to Fred, I have to still grade the bar exam. Other states hire people to do it, but Fred insisted that the board should do it. And we actually just finished up yesterday. So other of our board members would be here, but we actually just finished yesterday. That's the February exam. Fred also developed, as I said, our character and fitness process, and he believed strongly in the importance of that aspect of who should have the privilege to practice law. That's a lot of work, and Fred did it tirelessly, made it look effortless for over 40 years. Our profession owes a great deal of gratitude to Fred. Fred played a major part in making our profession what it is today. To Fred's family, his children Fred and Mary Kent Hill, and his brother Borden, thank you for sharing Fred with our profession. And on behalf of the North Carolina Board of Law Examiners and the thousands members of our professions who still benefits from Fred's life's work, we express our gratitude and honor the memory of an incredible man, Fred P. Parker. Thank you.
Our final honoree today is Robert L. Savage, Jr., and he will be remembered by Ryan Boyce.
Good afternoon. I'm Ryan Boyce of the Wake County Bar, and it's my privilege to memorialize and honor my grandfather, Robert L. Savage, Jr., who we all knew and loved as Babb. My grandfather began practicing in 1953 after graduating from both Wake Forest undergrad and law school, and after serving in the U.S. Army during the Korean War. Although he was born and raised in Polk County, North Carolina, he practiced in Wake County his entire career before retiring in the mid-90s. Although we share the same profession, my grandfather and I never had the chance to practice together, but I'm very fortunate to share reflections from two of his close colleagues that, if you indulge me, I'll read and share with you today. The first is from Tom Wilson, who was also a longtime member of the Wake County Bar. Shortly after I established my practice in 1988, I began hearing about Babb from a mutual business acquaintance from Apex, who worked with Babb's and my clients on business, insurance, and estate planning matters. He said that Babb mentioned that he may have some business and estate planning clients that may want to discuss issues with me and get our input. So I'd actually heard about Babb and the firm Savage and Godfrey for some time before Babb and I actually spoke. By reputation, Babb's expertise and practice were exceptional. And as I learned firsthand, his professionalism, devotion, concern, and relationships with his clients were, based on my 40 years of practice, also exceptional. One day I was sitting at my desk and was told that I had a call from Mr. Savage at Savage and Godfrey. That phone call began a legal relationship lasting over 15 years that was an education, a wonderful experience, and to this day, a fantastic impact on my practice and that of our firm. Shortly after that phone call, Babb came to our office in Raleigh with a couple he had represented for many years in various family, business, and real estate matters. They had unique situations regarding matters relating to their estate planning. Babb brought them in to see if they, and more importantly he, thought that we may be to assist with planning. Apparently the couple got Babb's okay to proceed with us after the initial interview, and we completed very challenging and interesting estate planning work for the couple and their family. Throughout the process, I talked to the clients and Bob continuously and was very impressed with the close relationship, professionally and personally, they enjoyed, thinking how nice and unique that relationship was. This was the first of numerous individuals and families Bob referred to me over the next 15 plus years. Likewise, I referred a number of clients to Bob, all who had excellent relationships with him. For the first year or so, Bob was Mr. Savage to me. Although he requested I call him Bob, it took some time, but eventually I realized that Bob was okay. Back to the clients Bob referred to me over the years. As it turns out, the close relationships with his clients was not unique at all when it came to Bob. He had the type of relationship with everyone, and I realized how special that was to him and his practice. During the planning process for our mutual clients, I would call Bob and update him, looking for advice on families. During those phone calls, I got to learn a little bit about Bob's life outside of the law practice, which he centered on family first, then sports, including Wake Forest and many family member sports, the beach, and of course, singing at church. I heard great stories about children, grandchildren, and other family members and their great accomplishments over the years. Bob was always willing to spend some time with me, either personally or over the phone, and was a guide in my many efforts to manage my personal and professional life. Through Bob, I met and worked with some of the nicest and closest families and individuals in my decades of practice. And Bob's influence continues to this day in my practice and that of our firm, and that we are fortunate to be able to continue working with many family members that Bob first introduced us to. Bob was and is a tremendous influence on me and our firm, and I'm sure to many others as an exceptional attorney, advisor, counselor, and friend. After Bob retired, we didn't speak much during the following years, but I was fortunate enough to get a chance to visit with him about a year and a half ago in our office. It was great to see Bob and his big smile again, as in many conversations, we talked about his love of family, Wake Forest sports, the beach, and all his wonderful times and experiences over 90 years. Bob did and does occupy a rare space in the North Carolina legal community through his many relationships over his many years of practice. The next reflection is from Mr. David Godfrey, also the Wake County Bar, who was my grandfather's law partner for many decades. In 1977, after graduating law school, I was cold calling law firms and mentioned to my barber how slow that process was going. He recommended that I call his lawyer, Bob Savage. I did and got an appointment to meet him. As it turns out, the appointment was actually for Linda Winstead, who was their office manager, to vet me. Apparently, I passed. What stands out in my mind in the first meeting are his alligator tassel loafers. This was the late 70s, remember. The only publication on his desk, a TV guide, every lawyer's go-to reference for all things, and the ashtrays in the waiting room. I was quickly advised that as long as he represented tobacco farmers, smoking was not only permitted, but encouraged. Bob hired me and allowed me to quickly become a partner, which was a rare opportunity for a new graduate. My father grew up on a farm during the Depression, so I was very familiar with being frugal. Bob perfected that art in the office. We used old chicken boxes for our file storage. Our copy machine was not quite steam-powered, but would now be considered an antique. The waiting room chairs were tiny and hard. Bob went home every day for lunch to see Bernie, who's my grandmother, but also because it was free. Except for the days we both ended up at the courthouse around lunchtime. He always ordered a hot dog and the smallest Coke they had. Never a second hot dog, never fries or a different sandwich. I don't know whether it was because he actually liked the hot dogs or because it was the cheapest thing on the menu. Needless to say, lunch breaks were short and we knew all the free parking spots downtown. Wouldn't that be nice if we still knew where those were? Bob's frugality, however, did not extend to the level of service he provided to his clients. One of the hardest things a lawyer, especially in a small town, must do is to figure out how much to charge a client. something I still struggle with after 46 years. I never knew Bob to overcharge a single client. If anything, whether due to the economic climate in which he was raised or his fear that the client would not come back, he usually undercharged them. While we appreciated referrals, it really aggravated him when a client would come in and say, "Joe recommended you. He said you were cheap." Bob knew everyone in town and represented most of them, with Carl Holloman and Skip Stam representing the rest. He was highly regarded by his neighbors and clients and by other members of the Wake County Bar. He had files going as far back to the 1950s, some of which I'm still in the process of going through and shredding. I never saw Bob really lose his temper. As is typical in the profession, he would frequently get exasperated with clients, other lawyers, and privately, probably me. If it was really bad, he would stomp his foot and say, "Dadgum!" I heard him mentioned as stern, but he had a ready and easy smile and was always polite, but always succinct and direct. Thank you again for everything, Bob. You, Bernie, and your family have meant so much to my family and to the staff here. While we'll miss you popping in to talk and eat out of the candy jar, we know Bob's better off in heaven with Bernie and the rest of the family. To close, this is me talking now. My grandfather became a great number of things in his very long life, from ball player to soldier, lawyer, choir singer, and even a second career as a golf course ranger. But he always prioritized and found joy in the most important labels he carried throughout his life. Those of father, husband, grandfather, great-grandfather, and most importantly to him, child of God. We love you, Papa. Thank you.
That concludes our program. I want to thank our esteemed judge, Judge Rozier, for presiding over this special session. Of course, it wouldn't be a special or a session of court without the bailiff and the clerk, and we appreciate you. Also want to thank Whitney Von Hom, the executive director of the bar, Nathaniel Adcock, our liaison, and Jake, thank you also for your remarks. As I mentioned earlier, and as you can see on the back of your programs as well, the video will go through an editing process, and some additional photographs will be added to it, and then it'll be available on the Wake County Bar Association YouTube site. And all the memorial sessions over all the years are there, and I sometimes look back at them, and I saw that Justice Morgan, I think, had presided over more than one. So, but anyway, thank you all for being here today and for sharing your loved ones with us. Thank you so much.
All right, this is not a program like the bar typically has where there is food, but if you're like I am, I feel full. We've seen and heard the stories that definitely reveal to us that there are memories that are left. There's no order for me to give from this special session of court, but if I were to give an order, I would order that on this day, March 28th of 2025, let it be declared, decreed, and ordered that the memories of Robert A. Bryant, Jr., the Honorable Stafford G. Bullock, Leonard M. Dodd, Thomas P. McNamara, and Frederick P. Parker III, and Robert L. Savage, Jr. not only left memories, but they indeed left legacies. All right, Madam Deputy, if you would, please close us out.
Yes, Your Honor. All rise. Oh yes, oh yes, oh yes. This Honorable Superior Court for the County of Wake stands adjourned. Sine die, God save the state and this honorable court.